So I'm Rebecca Goldfield, and my book is The Captive of Friendly Cove. It's a full-length graphic novel, and it's based on a true story of a young man who was aboard a ship called the Boston. And the Boston traded the Pacific Northwest, and unfortunately for the Boston, when it got to the Pacific Northwest, there was a fight between the captain and the local chief, and a few days later, there was a massacre. Everyone was killed except one young man, and this young man was taken as a slave. And while he was there, he kept a journal, and he kept very careful notes about the way of life, and he actually ultimately married a native woman and had a child. But all the time that he was trying to assimilate into life there, he really had to learn the language and survive in the wilderness. He still never gave up the idea of being rescued, and ultimately he was rescued and settled in New England and published that secret journal, and that journal is the basis of this book, Captive of Friendly Cove. It's a true story, so it's an adventure story, but it's really about it's really a personal story of someone's survival in the wilderness and his trying to hang on to his own identity while being absorbed into a new culture. But it's also a larger story of what happened on the Pacific West Coast when the native people and the Europeans and Americans kind of clashed. And he really, when he left England to join this trade, he had no idea of the forces that surrounded this trade, and I'm sure he never would have done it if he had any idea of what a difficult situation he was getting into. He just wanted to establish a new life in the new world, and got himself into a lot of trouble, but he had a great story to tell from it. It is so close to nonfiction that I practically would call it nonfiction, but we drew upon many sources, and we had to take a bit of poetic license because we had a journal to work with, and I had to create dialogue, I had to create transitions and scenes. I had to describe things in a way quite differently than he did in the journal. And so we relied on many other sources as well, but in the end, the journal is what really does inform it. And we quote from the journal quite a bit. We also had to look at other sources for visual material because these were people, you know, it was a pre-literate society, so they didn't have their own records. So we rely also on the records of the sea captains who visited that area. We rely on oral histories from the period, because people do remember, to this day, they remember that story. So we looked into many sources and combined them all. But in the end, that journal really is what informs the story. It's my first time at MICE, and it's been great. I think the people are so interested in history, whether they buy it or not. They're very enthusiastic people. I encourage kids to enjoy history in whatever form they can, enjoy graphic novels, and just remember that graphic novels are not only about superheroes. There are lots of other kinds of heroes in the world, and we want to tell their stories in comic form as well.